Oh, let's do it, man. This is the one that I've been...
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows what we're talking about?
All right. Who knows what we're talking about? Let's talk about it.
So, you clicked on this video because it said something along the lines of, let's talk about depression. And that is exactly what this video is. For any of you who are just curious, you're welcome to be here. Love to have the conversation with you. But for any of you that are searching that topic, exploring that conversation because you'd like to know more, or hear other people have a conversation about it, there's two important things that I'd like to point out at the very beginning. We both just have our personal journeys.
Yeah.
And that's all we're talking about. We're not medical experts. We don't know your story or what you've been through. We just know our context. And so you're joining us for a conversation that we would normally have in private that we're deciding to put because we think it can be beneficial to you. And it can start a conversation that's important. Along with that, one of the things that I think we both agree on, the reason we're making this is so that you know you're not alone in your feelings.
Yeah.
If you're just watching this channel because you're curious, again, we appreciate you being here. This conversation's for you as well. It's important to know and understand and have a dialogue about these things. But if you searched, let's talk about depression, or you searched depression, or you stumbled across this video because you're looking, that's okay. And it's important. And I'm really glad you showed up. And you're not dealing with stuff on your own. So, with that being said, because I assume some people are going to find this that don't know who we are, I am Jesse Samuel Anderson. I run a board game content site called Quackalope. I have been a photographer and videographer for a multitude of years, and I have dealt with degrees of depression probably since a teenager, I'd say, off and on, with pockets and periods of time that have been more emphasized and more extreme, in a variability of ways.
Pretty typical.
This is one of my closest friends, Michael Matthews.
Hi.
You are someone who is not only older than me. I've used that joke a few times. You are someone who I, over the past 6 or so years of knowing you, have gone to for advice, counseling. We've had deep conversations. We've enjoyed, I think, drinking a bourbon and sitting down and discussing things that maybe we don't understand or don't agree on, and exploring ideas and topics of mental health. And I would say you've been more set in your ways and stable than I have been. I was 22, 23 when we first met. I'm 28 now, and you've watched me grow up like you predicted I would.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a conversation about depression. I will open the floor to you to establish whatever sort of authority or history you want to tell, because I won't speak for you.
Yeah.
In terms of your own story.
Totally. So at 14, I was diagnosed with what was then called borderline psychotic personality disorder and chronic clinical depression. Since then, it's just borderline personality disorder. The psychotic tendencies came from traumatic stress and stuff like that. The chronic clinical depression has been renamed reoccurring major depressive disorder, which means that my depression is something that just comes back, and when it does, it's acute. It's very, very intense to almost suicidal degrees. And it's something that I've, I'm 46 years old now, and I've just kind of learned to live with it. I was on medication for a while, but I've learned to kind of wean myself off. Not that I recommend that, but for me, it worked out. So yeah, it's just something I've learned to live with and learned to deal with, and have helped or tried to help other people when they've struggled with it as well.
Yeah, I have no official diagnosis or anything other than my own personal stories and history and a degree of like figuring out how to manage things on my own. I've never taken any medication. I've never found counselors to be useful or helpful in any form or fashion.
It's tricky.
Which is a conversation I think we'll probably do. If you enjoy this conversation, I think there's a series of videos that go deep into these elements that would be worth talking about. Whether it is the impact of social media, counselors being effective, medication, diagnosis, all of that. But this is more of a universal approach. And the reason I wanted to film a video about this is because I think, my theory is, over the last year or so of COVID, the degree to which mental health and the challenges and things that people usually can button up and put in the back of their mind and avoid, I think a lot of those have been in the face. I don't necessarily think this year has created new problems. I think this year has, in terms of mental health,
Okay.
I think this year has emphasized and brought to the surface things that were maybe left dormant. And I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
And I think you disagree with me
bit,
on that
to
a degree.
Not a whole lot, but yeah.
But that's my theory. And so 2021 isn't solving this issue for us.
Oh.
And I'll be honest, a vaccine that, 100% of the world gets isn't solving this issue for us.
No.
We are going to have a longer conversation about mental health, about depression, about why through this trial so many people have either dipped into suicidal thoughts, dipped into deep depressions, or the rates of suicide in our country are at a point that we've never seen them before.
Yeah.
And so the conversation that we're having is not one from vulnerability. It's not one from, look at me, I need help, or anything like that. It's a conversation that I hope helps people.
I would say it is from vulnerability.
No, but it's not from a point of, I need help right now.
No.
It's from a point of, I need to have a conversation.
Right. I would say that, like, if we really want to have this conversation and we want to be honest about it, you have to be vulnerable.
You and I use vulnerability differently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're using it for the state of the... You're using it from a humility standpoint.
Okay.
I'm using it from the stance of, this isn't a cry for help.
Gotcha.
This is a purposeful and pointed conversation to discuss a topic that I think needs to be discussed.
You're not seeking attention.
No.
Got it.
I don't care.
Okay.
This is about things that are normally kept in private.
Opening up a conversation. Yeah.
So let's talk about depression. Over the last year or so, it's been emphasized a little bit, but it's interesting because over the last year or so, it hasn't been as bad as it's been in the past. I've dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts for a long period of my life. And I have learned luckily, to manage those thoughts over the years before this last year happened, before COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown and the tension in our country was ratcheted up to another level. But even this year, probably once every 3 months or so, I'll hit a period of time or a pocket of space where, like, I shut down.
Yeah.
I told you, I will never own a gun.
Yeah.
For a very specific reason. It's not that I would ever hurt anyone else with a gun.
It's that you might hurt yourself.
I think they are tools and items that you can use in a responsible fashion. But I personally have told 2 or 3 of my best friends, hey, if you ever hear me go out and say, I think I'm going to buy a Ruger,
tell me not to.
Maybe just come take it from me, because in a month or two, there's going to be a moment where I wake up and think to myself, oh, what's the point?
Yeah.
And it's not because it's not... Can you talk about this?
That's categorized as acute depression.
Yeah.
Or major
Can you talk about
disorder.
this? Because the way you described it before when we were having a conversation was interesting to me.
Okay.
Depression, it's not that life goes wrong and then I feel like shit.
Right.
Like,
that's normal.
Like, it's not that, like, something horrible happened and I wake up and I'm like, I'd like to end it all.
Right.
You just kind of wake up and you're like, well, that'd be interesting. That'd be nice. Like, what if there wasn't anything?
No, not necessarily. Depressive disorder is described as when it starts to interfere with your life, right? Because everybody experiences depression. There's not a single, well, there might be, but there's very few people who haven't experienced severe depression.
Everyone experiences sadness.
I would call it depression. I would call it depression 100%.
But I do know people who have never thought about killing themselves.
That's not necessarily depression.
Okay.
So depression is, like something horrible happens in your life. There's a trauma. A mom dies. Your pet gets hit by a car, and you're traumatized by that. And what's happening is your brain is, and again, I'm not a therapist, so please, but your brain is trying to process what just happened. It doesn't feel like it's supposed to be what happened. And you're not necessarily given the tools to deal with something that traumatizing or that out of place in your perception of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brain just kind of starts to slowly shut down and everything slows down. And it could possibly be a way for you to process things at a slower pace or whatever, but it's a shutdown, and that's depression. That's why it's called depression. You're coming down. Acute depression is where that depression becomes so much that you just can't deal with it anymore. You're done. And you have decided that, like, I can't handle this anymore. I'm ready to be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to be over it. Sorry. And that's acute depression. So, but I think it's important because a lot of people make that mistake, and I think it upsets people who have depression, is that they say, well, it's just, you're sad. You're just sad. And no, it's not just sad. Sad is the word, but everybody who has lived long enough has experienced depression.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between depression and depressive disorder.
Okay.
Right? Depressive disorder is where instead of being sad for, a week or a month or something like that you would normally take to grieve for a loved one or something like that, it goes on. There's something that in those wires or those hormonal triggers, it doesn't turn off.
Okay.
And it just continues, and it starts to affect your life. And you can't get past it anymore. It won't go away. You can't solve that problem and move on. And that's when it becomes a disorder. But if you have gotten to the point where you are feeling like life is too much, that's what they would consider acute or major depressive disorder. It's gotten to a point where it's just too much for you to handle anymore. And I think more people have that than will admit. I think a lot of people
part of this conversation, part of the reason.
I think a lot of people fall into that, and they feel guilty talking about it because there's such a stigma on it.
Why? And I will fully admit that there is a stigma around depression.
Yeah.
For me, it is a combination of I don't need help.
Yeah.
I figured it out. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it's not a challenge, but I don't want to be a burden unto the people that are around me. And then there's a stigma for the perception that you're not supposed to. It's abnormal.
Yeah. You're weak.
What is going on there? Why is there a stigma? Those are the two stigmas I see. But what do you see when you're talking about a stigma around the concept of depression?
No, 100%.
The risk of making a video about it.
Well, yeah, because we did talk about that, and it's been something I've struggled with because it's something I've wanted to do for a long time, but it's so scary because there is a stigma around it.
I have elements that I'm not sure I'm willing to talk about yet.
Everybody does,
but it's interesting because I have things that I would love to share. Is that too much?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because, and that's the thing. That's why I think these are so important. Is that we have. I mean, listen. I have been around through my chaotic life people in situations that were horrible.
Sure.
Horrible situations that I promise you don't want to hear about. And there's that stigma that you were talking about that prevents them from ever talking about it. But it's the act of talking about it, the act of getting it out that allows you to process it and get past it. But we're so adverse to talking about it because of our social stigmas around it. And I believe it's a social stigma.
Why are there social stigmas around it?
Well,
why is it shameful? Why?
So I couldn't tell you where it started, but I could tell you that, from my father's generation or that boomer generation, there was this. Psychology is still young. It's not. It hasn't been around as long as we like to think it has, and even when it started, it was still a practice. It was like, well, we think that we can help people here. Jung didn't.
Well, the dinosaurs had it figured out, but
Yeah. But, like Jung and Freud, they didn't have it figured out. They were guessing at things, and Freud was famously wrong in a lot of his, discoveries. But it was this thing where they thought, if you have these issues and you have to go to a doctor, well, you're crazy.
Hmm.
There's something wrong with you, and you shouldn't be a part of society. You're a lunatic. So I believe that is part of the stigma and the adversity to admitting that you have emotional issues, where we're starting to realize now, and especially in this pandemic, that no, it's everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost all of us suffer from these things from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
and if you've gone through what I've gone through, you realize that it's that ability to have a group of people that you trust and that you can talk to, uh, you know, that allows you to sort of process these problems without feeling stigmatized, without feeling judged, and that in itself is almost a lot of the times is enough to get you through.
Hmm.
And for the times that it's not, then you can go to a therapist or someone who's willing to sit and listen to you and help you gain the tools to process these, disorders or emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But without that, if we sit here and we talk to each other like, "Oh no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not weak. I'm not broken. I'm
Sure.
whatever," you never get past it, and it just is going to build and break you down more and more over time. And
So all of these things, I have so many rabbit holes that I want to go down, rabbit trails that I want to explore.
yeah,
And
you could.
those of you that are watching this, if you would like us to, let us know because we will. But to whatever degree.
Yeah.
But for this video, I think the overarching conversation isn't those rabbit holes. It isn't all those little things I want to explore because there's so much to talk about. I think it is more if you're watching this and depressed.
You're not alone.
Well, that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Talk about that and talk about what should be next.
Like
Because
steps.
because I know if I stumbled across this video on my own,
Yeah.
it would have been during a period of my time. And I mean, my most severe depressive episode was when I was like 19 years old.
Right.
I was dealing with a lot of stuff, a lot of trauma from the church, a lot of like growing up, like shifting, going to college, new life, new home, new.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of changes and shifts. But that was like a 6-month period where I probably slept 13 to 15 hours a day every day for 6 months straight.
Yeah.
I woke up with enough time to go to class, go to lunch, and then go to sleep.
Yeah. Some of you
I
know exactly what he's talking
no,
about.
I mean genuinely. Here's how extreme that period of my life was. I started college such an extrovert that during the 6 months that I was severely depressed, I not only had multiple leaders in the school ask me if I was okay,
Yeah.
but I also had most of my class thought I dropped out.
Wow.
The majority of my college, when I showed up the next year, thought that I had left school during that 6 months.
Wow.
And so, there's an interesting and much more complex story to talk about there.
Oh yeah.
But if I found this video, it would have been because there was a period where I was desperately searching. Not with a lot of energy, not with a lot of heart, not with any answers or solutions. But I remember
What were you searching? What would you be searching for?
for help. I mean, I went to a counselor at my school 3 times. The reason I don't like counselors is
Yeah.
both because I was forced to go to one when my mom passed away, and then in when I was 19 or 20 in college, I went to our school counselor 3 times, clearly not willing to share, but like indicating something was wrong.
Yeah.
And I was there with like long sleeve shirt, cuts on my wrist, like
Oof.
and in that conversation, it was indicated to me that if I was doing anything that was self harm related, I would potentially be removed to the school and sent for treatment.
Yeah.
And so I never went back. And then that year, someone at my school killed themselves. And so, like, I immediately became bitter towards the idea of whoever it was that was responsible for the mental health of our institution.
Yeah.
because they couldn't help me.
Oh yeah.
And I was sitting there like, as much as it wasn't indicated,
Yeah.
I was screaming, and it felt like I was screaming.
Yeah.
But I think very few people heard me. Many people believed me because I could put on a good
Right.
veneer of, oh no, I'm fine. I'm just, I'm just keeping to myself.
Yeah.
I feel good. Like I'm just reading books and,
Doing
like,
my own thing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I was so good at putting on a veneer that the moments, like going to the counselor 3 separate times, that indicated that I was like, that was me screaming. That was the most energy that I could exude to say, like, I'm desperately in need of help.
Yeah.
And it didn't come. I would have been Googling.
Yeah.
I would have been Googling enough. I have a concept for a few other videos. Like, I want to do a video at some point, probably when we're a little bit larger, so it's responsibly done. But I want to do a video that's like my mom just died.
Yeah.
I want to do a video that's like, 5 things I learned from, like, how I got over my, like, just things related to things that have been traumatic experiences in my life. Not because I need to talk about them, because when I was 13, if I had the internet, I would have went to Google and I would have searched, I'm fucking 13, my mom died, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And I want to be on the other side of that talking, right?
Good for you though. You should be.
But it's important because
Yeah.
I would have found that. So a video titled "Let's Talk About Depression."
Yeah.
If I was screaming when I was 19, 10 years ago or so, and I found this, what's next? Because no one's hearing me.
Yeah, so that's a tough one because there's so many
Sure.
different
All of
things.
this is hard,
Yeah, there's so many different ways that people experience depression and so many reasons that they go through it. But I would say that one of the most important things I learned through all of my therapy was to understand that you are not alone. That some of those people that you look at and they seem strong and extroverted and like they're not dealing with anything, they're dealing with it too. The other thing that I would try to explain to somebody is that even though you feel like this is the end, it'll never go away, and this is how it's going to feel for the rest of your life. That's not it. It's not it. You can get through it, and you can get rid of it. And I know that saying that as somebody who has reoccurring depressive disorder.
I was gonna say, for some of us, we manage it.
Yeah.
Which I think
someone
is
like
not,
myself.
I think almost the reason I'm interrupting there is because I think almost saying that it is manageable, as opposed to it is disposable, for me gives me more authority and understanding of what I'm facing.
Well, that's why I was going where I was going.
It's not a sickness.
No,
I mean,
it's not.
It's not a thing that you get. It's
And that could be a whole nother episode, because going into the causes and what's really going on in your head is a whole nother subject.
Sure.
That is important for you to understand, and it's where a therapist can help you. But just knowing that even if you're someone like me who can't get rid of it, who it's just going to be a part of your life, I will say that knowing that is who I am and learning how to recognize when it comes up has helped me learn the steps that I need to get myself through it.
So,
and
when we didn't prep on this, but
yeah,
what, if any, are the actionable steps that someone could take? Not for you. I mean,
for
it
anybody,
could be for you, but like
I would say accomplishing anything, accomplishing anything. Like you were talking about going hiking, that is a super lofty goal for someone with major depression. Like going hiking is,
but that is also
that's like going to the moon sometimes for someone like me.
I hear you, but it's also and I don't think we've actually addressed this in this video. So one of the things that I find whenever I'm in a position, and I have more control over it now than I've ever had it before, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I found when I'm in a position where I'm contemplating, where I have suicidal thoughts, where I'm depressed, and the suicidal thoughts nowadays aren't things that I would ever actually act on.
Right.
They're just there.
And that's a different
and they shut me down. It's a different subject, but it
Yeah.
is different from when I was 19. When I was 19, if it had been easy to press a button and do it, I would have.
Okay.
Which is what, like, it's a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that I know gets me out of a funk is hiking. But that also comes with a lot of background and a lot of caveats. It's
Right.
not only energy and work and like effort, but I also have the history with my grandfather on the trail.
Yeah.
Like the happiest point and the most reconciliation that I ever had from my mother's death was on the Appalachian Trail.
Right.
Hiking's different for me. And so you're saying it's like a mountain to climb, for people who have major depressive episodes. And I think you're right, but it also works for me for a very different reason than it works for other people.
Right. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to diminish
No,
or say that
I
you
just wanted to
don't
clarify.
have. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
say that like there are people out there. If
You
if
said-
somebody's googling this,
You said in an earlier video, swinging your legs over the side of the bed.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
For me, there's days when just getting
And I
out
don't
of
think I
bed-
have major depressive episodes.
You might though. Like
Um,
that's the thing is
I
it's
think I
different
have-
for everybody.
Sure, I
It's
think
not
I have
something-
depression, and I know I've had periods of my life where I was heavily traumatized and depressed.
Yeah, man.
But I don't. It's different from a diagnosis.
It's contextual. It's
Yes.
not different from a diagnosis. It's contextual.
Sure.
It depends on the individual.
Sure.
What I'm just trying to say is that like you don't want to tell everybody just go hiking because there's people
not.
out there who again don't come from your background
Yes.
and they're like, okay, well, if I could get my clothes on,
Yeah.
I could
I'd
go
do it.
hiking.
This is why you're
that's what I'm-
saying
yeah, that's what I'm-
accomplish anything.
just sometimes like if it's really bad for me, there's days when I will wake up and the first thoughts that go through my head are dark thoughts and I'm just like, okay,
This is one of those days.
yeah.
Hello.
And it didn't used to be. I didn't used to know that
Yeah.
that's what was causing it, and we could
Interesting.
go into that. That's a whole nother.
More cognitively aware of it.
There's a whole nother episode that we could go into of why your brain goes in a dark place right away. It's you want to rationalize these thoughts. I know now that they're irrational.
That would be an interesting conversation because I
It's-
genuinely nowadays go, oh yeah, here's one of the days I shouldn't own a gun.
Yeah.
And I find it, I observe it, right? It's like a third party going, "You depressed."
Yeah. And that's an important place to be in your life,
But it
especially
took
as someone
me-
with depression.
It took me 10 years.
Yeah. I would say it probably took me 30.
Sure.
Yeah, and at some point I realized like, oh, this is not me. This is my depression. And so now that I'm having this day, I got to do something to get myself out of it. Because I know by now, which younger people don't know, like when it's your first time going through it, you don't have any data sets to go
For
back
sure.
on.
For sure.
So there's this point where it's just like I feel horrible. What do I do? And the only advice I can give you aside from finding a therapist is make your bed. Get up, put some clothes on, make your bed, make yourself breakfast. Do anything that you feel like you don't want to do. And this is no joke. I have had days where I don't even want to go to the bathroom. Like I'm just laying there going, God, I gotta pee, but I don't want to get out of bed. And I'm sure that there's people, if they've Googled it, they're watching right now going,
It felt
yeah,
like
that's
that.
me.
Yeah.
Like I don't even want to get out of bed to go pee, man. And just that alone sometimes, just like just knowing that I am going to do this thing despite my feelings, it's weird. It's like that will start to slowly kick you out of it. Not completely.
Yeah.
And you might spend a whole day feeling like crap, but it can get you past the acute part.
So, from the very beginning, we said identify that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Which is an important message of this conversation. I mean,
agree.
it's the heart of this conversation. I mean, this isn't that. I mean, this isn't that informative, but I think it's important to see people talking about it.
Yeah.
Followed up by do anything, which is the method to healing. And then I think for me, if I was going to add a third note to this, a third final actionable thing would be don't compare yourself.
Absolutely.
Period.
War stories. Yeah.
I mean, not even war stories. I'm saying,
Well-
like, don't compare yourself to people who are happy, people who present themselves as anything other. Like, don't rationalize where you are. Understand that you're, like, if you've Googled this and you're watching it, you're currently struggling with this, and it's okay to be here, and that it's okay to then work from this point forward.
Yeah.
You're not wrong for being not as happy as someone else. You're not
Yeah.
wrong for being not as sad as someone else. If someone's peeing freely and they're not relating to you, like, that's all right. You don't have to be that depressed before you start dealing with it.
Yeah.
I think it's important that the only thing you compare yourself to and engage yourself by is yourself. So you understand where you've been, where you've come to, and where you could go. You don't start going, because I've never been so depressed that I couldn't pee. I've always comfortably peed. But, but jokes aside, I think it is harmful to compare yourself both on the negative scale and on the positive scale.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't help.
I would agree. I would agree. The comparisons, they're kind of natural thing to do, but
yeah, they're very natural.
It doesn't really help you very much.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that's a conversation about depression. I didn't know where this conversation was going to go, and I wanted this one to be more freeform than not. We have a lot of topics that we could dig into, with planning and research and responding to comments, and the past conversations that we've had, and stories that I think are worth sharing. There's a lot we could go into here. I sort of want to do a test run. We did a video on loneliness. We did a video on depression.
Yeah.
To open the door to conversation. If those of you that are watching enjoy or are interested in or like to have more conversations about this, if it is helpful in any sort or form of way, we would be happy to continue having conversations.
Absolutely.
If it doesn't get much of a response or gets, 873 downvotes, then we'll reevaluate and adjust. And whatever the case, I think we'll probably plan a few more videos that we think specifically would be helpful to have.
Sure.
But yeah, this is just an experiment. It's a test run. It's something that I felt was important to talk about, that a conversation that is hard to have, and this channel's all about documenting my journey, my experience, the progress, and the failings that we have made along the way. And I don't think the conversation would be fairly had if I didn't address things that were difficult. My mother's death, my journey through religion, the depressive episodes that I've had, and the friends that are the closest to me that deal with things that are, like, real. Like, life. I mean, really, life exists.
Yeah.
It's messy and complicated.
Not always easy.
No, it's messy and complicated and punctuated by suffering, and if we don't address it, we lose all authority over managing it.
Yeah. I agree.
So thanks for watching.
Yeah.
If any of you have just discovered the channel, leave a comment down below if you're able to. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, join the conversation. We care about you.
For real.
So, we'll see you next time. Bye. How do you feel?
Nervous?
Why nervous? I'll show it to you before I publish it.